other side of the story to a member of the Republican leadership in the Senate, Senator Lamar Alexander. He joins us from Maryville, Tennessee. Well, let me just start where Robert Gibbs was talking about that the administration has done everything possible, morning, noon, and daylight, nighttime too, to get this thing fixed down in the Gulf. Senator, do you think they've done everything they could do?
Bob, I'm not going to start pointing fingers at the administration. There's one thing they could do. Under the law, they can fire BP and take it over. But the truth is the federal government probably doesn't have the capacity to do that. I think we ought to allow the administration, working with the governments and others, to do its best to clean it up, make our verdict about the blame later.
But would you favor taking over a BP if that became necessary?
Sure, that's up to the president to decide. Under the law, we know who pays. That's BP. They're the responsible party. And we know who's managing the federal effort. That's the Coast Guard. But under the law, the federal government can take it over if they choose. And I understand why they might not choose, but that option exists.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about what happened last week, these elections, especially down in Kentucky, where you had the hand-picked candidate of Mitch McConnell, your leader in the Senate. The whole Republican establishment down there was for one guy, and along comes Rand Paul, this Tea Party favorite, and he doesn't just beat him, he wins it in a blowout. But since then, he has had some rather controversial things to say, like the '64 Civil Rights Bill may have been too broad. He's questioned the Disabilities Act. He's talking about abolishing the Federal Reserve and the Department of Education. Can you see yourself supporting a candidate who takes those kinds of positions, Senator?
Yes, I can.
You can.
And I'm glad he cleared up at least one of them. But here's what happened. You know, even a very good baseball player sometimes has a hard time going from AAA to the major leagues, and that's what happened to him last week. If he'll stick to the jobs, debt, and terror, and providing a check and balance on a runaway government in Washington, he'll be the next Republican senator. We'll be glad to have him.
But that's not what he campaigned on. He campaigned on all these other things, doing away with the Department of Education, getting rid of the Federal Reserve, and then talking about that the Civil Rights Act went too far.
Well, he clarified that. He made a mistake there. At least I thought he did. At least it's different than my opinion. We already have senators who want to get rid of the Fed. And, you know, we've got a Democratic caucus with nearly 60 votes. It includes a very nice senator from Vermont who proudly describes himself as a socialist. So a little check and balance in the Senate wouldn't be a bad thing.
Well, I think the Republican Party, as I understand it, is trying to broaden its appeal to African Americans, to minorities. Why would any member of any minority group want to vote or want to be for someone who says that, well, you know, maybe that Civil Rights Act went a little too far? I know you say he's clarified it. Now he says he wouldn't vote to repeal it. But just saying you wouldn't repeal it after saying maybe it went too far, I mean, can you be for that?
Oh, I cannot be for that. I was for the Civil Rights Act of '64, '68, '75. I helped put in the Martin Luther King holiday in Tennessee. When I ran for re-election in 2008, I got 25% of the African-American vote with President Obama on the ticket. So we have plenty of Republican candidates who will get plenty of African-American votes. I think Ron Paul had a tough week last week. If he'll focus on providing a check and balance on a runaway Washington government, he'll be fine, and he'll be elected.
What about this whole business of the Tea Party? Is it going to prove to be a good thing for Republicans, or is this something you need to be worried about here?
Well, I think anytime Americans want to get out of their chairs and focus on jobs, debt, and terror, and checking a runaway government in Washington, we want them in our primaries, we want them as our nominees, and we want them in the United States Senate. I think it provides diversity in our party, makes us a bigger tent, gives us a lot more energy. But I think the American people are really upset right now. And this election is going to have a lot of fresh faces, a lot of surprises. But the mood is, let's throw the rascals out in Washington. And the Democrats are the rascals by a big majority. And I think we're going to have a lot more Republicans in November for that reason.
But there are no Democrats running in some of those Republican primaries out there. There are Tea Party candidates taking on mainstream members of your party, and I guess that's what I'm getting at.
When you have a lot of energy, Bob, out there in the country, one party or the other is going to attract it. And we have people who have looked at Washington and look at a bailout every other day, too much taxes, too much debt. I mean, this new financial regulation bill is just a big wet blanket on our entrepreneurial system in the country, our system for creating jobs, and they want to slow that down or stop it. So we want that energy in our party. I think we're getting it, and it's going to produce some surprises and several new faces.
All right. Lamar Alexander, thank you very much for being with us, Senator. We're going to be back in a